Welcome to Two Weirdos, the sacred space for misfits, mystics, and miracle workers in the making. I'm your host Denise, truth teller, spirit walker, Bible deconstructor, here to walk you out of religion and right back into divine alignment. This isn't church as usual. We talk healing, prophecy, synchronicity, and spiritual power. For those of us who have been told that we were too much, we're not enough for God. Guess what? You are the miracle all along. Today, I want to talk directly to those who have ever felt invisible in their pain, those who have shown up week after week, year after year, hoping for a miracle, only to leave with the same ache. I know what that feels like. For a long time, I believed that my wounds, they made me unworthy of God's attention. I thought that miracles were for the people who had it all together, the ones who never made mistakes or had a messy life. But the Holy Spirit whispered something to me that changed everything. He said, "You were the miracle all along. You just didn't know it." Let me tell you a story. My story, and the story of countless others who have walked a similar path. It's a story of hope, of healing, and of the quiet, persistent faith that keeps us reaching out even when we're feeling unseen. It's the story of the woman in Mark 5. Let's talk about the woman who was unnamed in Mark 5, whose story is both heartbreaking and hopeful. She had suffered from a condition which made her bleed for 12 years. In her culture, that meant that she was considered to be unclean. She was untouchable. She wasn't supposed to be outside during the day. She was unworthy of community or even comfort. She was only known by her suffering. Her name isn't even mentioned in the Bible. Her dreams, her potential, they didn't matter. She was only known by her suffering. Can you imagine being solely defined by your pain? And for 12 years, she carried that burden, isolated and ashamed. Her condition, it wasn't just physical. It was social, emotional, as well as spiritual. The law at that time stated that anyone who touched her would also become unclean. That meant that she couldn't be comforted by her family. She couldn't worship in the temple, and she couldn't even participate in the life of her community. She was, in a very real sense, invisible. And yet, in the midst of her suffering, she found the courage to reach out. She didn't demand attention or make a scene. She simply touched the hem of Jesus' garment, believing that even this small act would bring her healing. And instantly, her bleeding stopped. But Jesus didn't just heal her body and move on. He stopped, turned around and said, "Who touched me?" Because he saw her. He didn't just see her condition. He called her daughter. The only time in Scripture that Jesus uses that word for another person. In that moment, she wasn't just healed, she was restored. Her identity was reclaimed. She was seen, loved, and welcomed home. The story is more than just a miracle. It's a story of restoration, of being seen for who you truly are, not just for what you've suffered through or what you've done. It's a story that speaks to anyone who has ever felt invisible, unworthy, or alone. I've spent a lot of my life waiting for someone to see me. Not my performance, not my mistakes, but the real me. Similar to the woman in Mark, I felt defined by my struggles, by my mess, or my mistakes. There's been times that I've wondered if I missed my chance for healing, if I'm too messy or too broken to be loved. But Jesus reminds us that healing is about more than just fixing what's broken. It's about restoring who we are at our core. We're beloved. We're worthy. We're seen. We were made in His image. When Jesus called that woman daughter, He wasn't just giving her a title. He was giving her a place. He was saying to her, "You belong here. You are part of my family." And that's the kind of healing that we all long for. Not just to be fixed, but to be welcomed home. Now, I want to talk about another story of healing that's not always told in every church. It's in the story of Tobit. It's the story of Tobit and Sarah, and it's found in the Book of Tobit. If you've never heard of that book, you're not alone. It's just because it's in what's called the Deuterocanonical books. I trip over that word every single time. Those writings are included in the Catholic and the Orthodox Old Testament, but they were not originally written in Hebrew or Aramaic, and their place in the Bible has been debated, pretty hotly throughout history. But during the Protestant Reformation, most of those books were set aside. But for millions of Christians, they still do remain a source of wisdom, of comfort, and of inspiration. So, the story of Tobit is set during the exile of the Israelites in Assyria. Tobit is a righteous man who has gone blind, and Sarah is a woman who has lost all hope after suffering a series of tragedies. Both of them cry out to God, not for healing, but for death. They were so broken, so exhausted, that they couldn't even imagine a way forward. But God doesn't answer with a dramatic miracle or a bolt of lightning. Instead, God sends an angel named Raphael, who comes disguised as a man named Azariah. Raphael walks with Tobit's son Tobias on a journey. He is a quiet and faithful companion, offering guidance, protection, and hope. Raphael helps Tobias find love, helps Sarah defeat the demon that has tormented her, and ultimately restores Tobias' sight. At the end of that journey, Raphael reveals his true identity. I am Raphael, one of the 7 angels who stand in the presence of God. This story reminds us that healing often comes in unexpected ways. It may not be loud, it may not be dramatic, and it may not even happen instantly. Sometimes healing is a journey, and sometimes God sends us companions who walk with us through the darkness. This is a message that we don't hear enough. Healing isn't always about the altar call or the public miracle. Sometimes it's about the quiet presence of someone who just walks with us, who believes in us when we are not able to believe in ourselves. Sometimes healing is about learning to trust again, to hope again, to remember who we are. The stories of the woman in Mark and Tobit and Sarah teach us that healing is about more than just the physical restoration. It's about identity, belonging, and community. It's about being seen and known for who we are, not just for what we've suffered or even what we've done. It's about finding our place in God's family, even when we're feeling invisible or unworthy. So what does that mean for us today? If you've been bleeding in silence, if you've been walking in darkness, if you've been praying just to make it through one more night, remember this: you're not alone. You may already be walking with an angel, even if you don't realize it. And you, yes you, might be the miracle in someone else's story. Healing isn't just about being restored, it's about remembering who it is that you are. And that's what Jesus gave that woman. That's what Raphael carried through his journey. And that's what is being offered to you right now. Let's break the shame together. Let's stop pretending that healing only happens or only belongs to the most holy, the perfect, and the put together. Let's stop hiding behind silence. Let's reach out, even if we tremble when we do it. One of the most powerful things that we can do is share our stories. When we talk about our struggles, our doubts, and our hopes, we create space for other people to do the same. We remind each other that we're not alone, healing is possible, and that we're all part of something that's bigger than ourselves. I've seen this happen in my own life and in the lives of others. When we're honest about our pain, we give other people permission to be honest about theirs. We create a community where people can be seen, known, and loved just as they are. The story of Tobit reminds us that God often works through people, through friends, family, and even strangers who show up at the exact right time. Sometimes these people are ordinary. Sometimes they're extraordinary. But every time, they're a reminder that we're not alone. If you're hearing this and you feel alone, I want you to know that you're seen, you're loved, you're not forgotten. God is with you, even in darkness. And sometimes God sends us angels, people who will walk with us, who believe in us, and who remind us of who it is that we are. Healing is not a one-time event, it's a journey. It's a process of learning to trust again, to hope again, to remember who we are. Sometimes the journey is long, sometimes it's hard, but every time it's worth it. If you're ready to walk out of shame and into wholeness, I would encourage you to pick up the You Were the Miracle All Along book and the companion workbook. It's more than just pages. It's a return to your name, to your power, and your promise. And if you want to understand the angels that God has assigned to you, the Angels Among Us guide is your next step. Finally, remember this: you are the miracle. You still believe, even if it's just a flicker, and you do not have to bleed in silence anymore. Let's go seek the healing and the wholeness that's waiting for us. Let's go seek. I just wanted to add an additional note to the end of this podcast about the Book of Tobit. To truly appreciate the significance of the Book of Tobit, let's take a closer look at its context, its themes, and the reasons that it's not included in all of the Bibles. The Book of Tobit is set during the Assyrian exile, a time when many Israelites were taken from their homeland and forced to live in a foreign land. This context is important because it shapes the experiences of Tobit and his family. They're strangers in a strange land, and they're trying to remain faithful to God in a culture that doesn't share their values or their belief system. Tobit is a righteous man, and he's known for his acts of charity and piety. In spite of his faithfulness, he still suffers greatly. He becomes blind, and his family faces hardship and ridicule. Sarah, a relative, is tormented by a demon and has lost all hope. Both of them cry out to God in their despair. The role of Raphael in this story. Raphael's name literally means God heals. He's sent by God to help Tobit and Sarah. He does not come with fanfare. He doesn't come with dramatic signs. He comes disguised as a human companion, simply walking with Tobias on a journey. Along the way, he offers guidance, protection, and hope. He helps Tobias find love, helps Sarah defeat the demon, and ultimately restores Tobit's sight. At the end of the story, Raphael reveals his true identity. He says, I am Raphael, one of the 7 angels who stands in the presence of God. This revelation is a reminder that God is always with us, even when we don't realize it. Sometimes God's presence is hidden in the ordinary people and events in our lives. Why is the Book of Tobit not in all of the Bibles? I mentioned it briefly before, but the Book of Tobit is a part of the Deuterocanonical books, which are included in the Catholic and the Orthodox Old Testament, but they're not in most Protestant Bibles. And that's because the books were not originally written in the language for the scribes in Hebrew or Aramaic. So their place in the Bible, it's just kind of one of those topics that's been hotly debated. So the reasons for the exclusion, they're complex. Some scholars question their authorship and their historical accuracy. Others were more concerned that they were not included in the Hebrew Bible. But regardless of their status, these books contain valuable lessons about faith, healing, and God's presence in our lives. The story of Tobit teaches us several important lessons. Healing is often a journey, not an event. Tobit and Sarah, they don't receive instant miracles. Instead, they're accompanied on a journey of faith and hope. God works through people. Raphael comes in the form of a human companion, reminding us that God often works through the people around us. Faithfulness and suffering is honored. Despite his suffering, Tobit remains faithful to God, and his faithfulness is ultimately rewarded, not with a dramatic miracle, but with restoration and hope. Which tells us hope is always possible. Even in the darkest moments, God is present and he's at work. So let's talk about what this means for us today. How do we apply these lessons to our own lives? First, acknowledge your pain. The first step towards healing is acknowledging your pain. Let it come to the surface. Feel it. Don't hide it. Don't pretend it doesn't exist. Be honest with yourself and with God about what it is that you're feeling. Number 2, reach out for help. Just as the woman in Mark reached out to Jesus, and just as Tobit and Sarah were helped by Raphael, don't be afraid to reach out for help. Whether it's a friend, a family member, or a professional, reaching out is a sign of strength, not weakness. Number 3, trust the journey. Healing is a journey. It's not a destination. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. But just know that God is with you every step of the way. And trust the process, even when it's hard. Number 4, remember who you are. You're not defined by your pain. You're not defined by your past. You're a beloved child of God. You're worthy of love. You're worthy of belonging. Remember who you are, even when the world is trying to convince you or tell you otherwise. Number 5, be a companion to others. Just as Raphael was a companion to Tobit and Sarah, you can be a companion to others. Offer your presence, your listening ear, and your encouragement. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give is simply to walk with someone through their pain. As we come to the end of this fireside chat / podcast, I want to leave you with this reminder. You are the miracle. You are seen. You are loved. You're not alone. Whether you're bleeding in silence, walking in darkness, or just trying to make it through one more night, remember that healing is possible. It may not come in the way that you expect, but it will come. Let's break the cycle together. Let's stop pretending that healing only belongs to the holy or the perfect. Let's reach out, even if we're scared to do it, even if we tremble while doing so. And let's remember that we're all a part of God's family. We're all beloved, worthy, and seen. If you're ready to walk out of shame and into wholeness, pick up the You Were the Miracle All Along workbook. It's more than just pages. It's a return to your name, to your power, and your promise. And if you want to understand the angels that God has assigned to you, the Angels Among Us guide is your next step. Say it with me. I am the miracle. I still believe. And I will not bleed in silence anymore. Let's go seek the healing and the wholeness that's waiting on us.